Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States.
In 2018, more than 48,000 Americans died by suicide.
There were 1.4 million suicide attempts.
We know we have lost several police officers to suicide.
Firefighters,
other city employees don't struggle alone.
We value you.
You are important.
You matter.
Let's start having the difficult
but necessary conversation
about suicide and mental health
like any other medical condition.
Starting today
on World Suicide Prevention Day.
Together,
we can stomp out
the stigmas of suicide and mental illness.
World Suicide Prevention Day. It's a day to remember those affected by suicide. It's a day to raise awareness. And it's a day to focus our efforts on directing treatment to those who need it most. In that regard, it's time for a critical conversation with our panelists. Our first panelist is James M. Lash. He is a Memphis police officer with over 22 years of experience in various patrol and investigative assignments. Currently, he serves as the Crisis Intervention Team Coordinator, as a member of the Crisis Negotiation Team, and as an instructor assigned to the Training Academy. He holds a specialized certification in crisis intervention training. He's also a 20-year veteran of the United States Armed Services. Our next panelist, Resha Jack, is a licensed professional counselor with experience working with adults who struggle with trauma, identity struggles, managing emotions, and much more. She has earned both a BLS and an MS counseling degree from the University of Memphis, and she is trained in EMDR trauma treatment. Resha Jack is the solo practitioner of her private therapy practice in downtown Memphis, and her number one value as a therapist is non-judgment. As a counselor, she feels honored to be able to help to guide an individual into a greater sense of awareness about themselves while helping them to understand and believe that they are able to maintain control and power over themselves and their situations. And our final panelist is Justin Johnson, the Regional Director of the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network for Memphis and Shelby County. As a regional director, he advocates to eliminate the stigma of suicide. He provides evidence-based trainings and assists organizations and teams to provide prevention, postvention, and intervention services. He holds a bachelor's and a master's degree from the University of Memphis in social work, and he is a U.S. Marine Operation Iraqi Freedom veteran. He's a life member of the Department of Tennessee's Veterans of Foreign Affairs Wars, where he serves his local veteran community as the Junior Vice Commander for the VFW District 10, which is Shelby County. He's also a former Memphis police officer and served as a patrolman for 5 years. Welcome, panelists.
Thank you.
So we'll just kind of start. I have just a few questions that I wanted to start for our critical conversation that we're going to have here today. My first question is, isn't suicide, is it rare? Justin?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Actually, it's not really as rare as people think. Just for our region that we live in, Tennessee, on average, we lose 1,100 people to suicide. Sadly, for Memphis and Shelby County, out of all counties in Tennessee, we lose more people to suicide. For our latest statistics for 2018, we lost 103 people to suicide. That's about an average of 11 a month. That's why it's critical for us to have discussions like we are having right now.
Okay. Is there a particular demographic that's more at risk for suicide, Justin?
Well, I'd say mental health affects every single person. Statistically, as far as like gender and race, males have higher, older males, 65 and older, have higher rates of suicide. Specifically, shows to affect white males. But there are factors that we can point to and look to when somebody might be at a risk. Because suicide, I believe, is the most preventable kind of death.
Okay. So you talk about prevention. How would we know, or how can someone know if somebody is suicidal? Ms. Jack? Are there any warning signs?
Yeah. Noticeable changes or significant changes in behavior or attitude, someone becoming very combative and angry for a long period of time, someone who has become very withdrawn, and you want to listen for the things that they're saying. If they're saying things like, I wish I weren't born, the world would be better off without me, I feel like I'm taking up space. Although we consider those types of terms more indicative of passive suicidal thoughts, not so much the active thoughts, but it is at least the beginning of that kind of thinking. And it's something to start listening to and not dismissing when we hear those types of things.
Officer Lash, Justin, do you all have anything to add? When we think about warning signs or just interactions with friends and family, things to be on the lookout for or to listen for?
I don't know if it's my computer's breaking or not, but some things that you should be aware of, just as Ms. Ratio was talking about, is recent moves as far as like major life changes. Substance abuse dramatically increases the risk of suicide. I've even shown some studies where impulsivity raises by 90% when alcohol is introduced. But especially, sadly, I've lost 5 friends that I served with in the Marines, and they all exhibited, I guess, many people would characterize as inappropriate behavior as far as anger. So that would be one of the big things that I would look for is normally we classify them as problem people, but actually they're reaching out for help. So any kind of incarceration, arrest, substance abuse, be aware of.
Understood.
And if I could add to that, my experience through the military and some of the calls that I've made is people describing to me risky behavior, behavior that the person would not normally do. And a lot of times there's increased use of alcohol or an alcoholic incident that's a little out of the norm for that individual. So those could be signs as well.
Thank you. So I understand and I heard things to kind of be aware of when interacting with family, friends, coworkers. If you see that someone seems troubled, is it safe to ask if they're thinking about hurting themselves? If you bring it up, are you increasing the risk or the danger of suicide by just even broaching the conversation or the topic?
No, ma'am. That's actually one of the myths that we try to dispel, is that if I ask somebody if they are suicidal or considering suicide, that it would almost provoke them. That is absolutely true. In my past experience and through other people that have trained in our evidence-based training, people are actually relieved when you ask them, have you been thinking about suicide? Do you have a plan? Because it opens the door and it makes them feel not shameful of having these thoughts. And it's just a way we can be an honest friend. But one of the things that I harp on is that we create an environment that is not biased or judgmental, and that we're just a friend.
And Mr. Justin just brought up my buzzword, non-judgmental. Sometimes we tiptoe and we don't want to set someone off, or we don't want to upset them, so we don't want to go into that topic. But we are literally talking about life or death, and you have to be very direct about that. Ask those direct questions, because even if they haven't made up their mind yet, sometimes you need to put it in those concrete terms for them to see, hey, this is life or death we're talking about you, and I care about you, and I care about you enough to risk you being upset with me because I asked this, but we need to directly talk about it.
And we
I'm
also,
sorry.
the police department, yeah, in our 40-hour CIT training, we talk about that exact thing that Ms. Jackson was talking about, being direct. Let's go right at the problem. Let's put it where it's supposed to be. I mean, if we're at that point that all the indicators are telling, let's not beat around the bush. Let's get directly to what the issue really may be.
Yeah, that's something I'd like to add to what Officer Lash said, is that there's a sense of urgency here. If you see the warning signs, trust your gut and just ask. We know when something is not right and something is not normal. It doesn't take a mental health professional to recognize somebody that they are suicidal. In fact, the people that are going to notice it are going to be your coworkers, your family members, and the people that you interact with every day. They're going to notice a change in attitudes and behaviors. And they should interact. But one of the things I would encourage, though, if you know somebody and you think they are suicidal, ask them the question, and then don't leave them alone until you find somebody else that can get them help, or you can get them help too. Because that's one of the things that we don't need to do, is leave somebody alone if we think they are suicidal.
Okay, Justin. And isn't there an acronym for that? There's a few, ACE or RESHA or even Officer Jack. Are you familiar with any type of acronyms to kind of remind people what they should do if they suspect somebody is in danger or thinking of suicide? I think ASK, care, and then escort is the ACE. But I was just curious if you were aware of any other acronyms just to keep in mind to when you're in that situation that you can kind of go back to.
So an easy one that we use, and it's what one of our gatekeeper training is, and this might be, I mean, there's a ton of acronyms out there, but is QPR. Question, you ask the question, are you suicidal? You persuade the person to seek help, whether it's through mental health resources that you know, then you refer them to the appropriate person.
Okay. That's a good one too. Right? So Officer Lash, you on the previous question, you talked about CIT. So can you kind of just elaborate a little bit about the program and tell us what that actually is?
I could. The CIT program is a first responder program that was started in the late 80s. And the mission of the program is to become partners with those people in the community that work with those individuals that may be diagnosed mentally ill, that have some sort of mental illness, and the family members. The number one advocates of the people with mental illness is those family members. And our goal is to set a standard of excellence for the officers involved in the treatment of those individuals that suffer from mental illness. And we establish some individual responsibilities and overall accountability for our results through the training that we do provide. Speaking of training, it's no cost to the city or the police department. These professionals come in and they volunteer their time and their expertise in many fields of training. And then, the way we choose or the CIT program picks its officers is through volunteerism. They volunteer to become a CIT officer. And usually what happens is you get the best from that volunteerism to actually go through the training. And most of the people have a direct relationship to someone with mental illness or a family member that has gone through a crisis or some sort of life-altering situation that needed intervention at some point. And those individuals or those officers usually become the best CIT officers that we have. The other bonus that we have, our program is almost 32 years old, so we're pretty rooted in the community. And if there is a situation that a family member or a coworker or somebody can identify as a crisis that is unmanageable by that individual, they know they can call the Memphis Police Department and ask for that CIT officer, looking for that CIT pin on that officer's chest, and know that they're going to get a well-trained individual that's there for that person, and show them an avenue to either some sort of treatment or assessment or refer them to a treatment center or some sort of service. And that goes not only to the person that's diagnosed with the mental illness or the person in crisis, but that's the family members as well. We don't want to leave that scene with the family members wondering what happened. So we really like to walk everybody through that and let them know what's going to happen. That's kind of a quick general thing for CIT.
Sure. And so you spoke of the 32-year history, and you're just being very humble, because actually CIT started right here in Memphis with our very own Memphis Police Department, our mental health care providers, and University of Memphis. And so other agencies and police departments throughout the country and the world, they look at our model that was started here in Memphis. So I think that's an important note to make sure that it's recognized as well. Thank you, Officer Ladd. So when we talked about the acronyms to kind of help us remind ourselves, like, what should we do if ever presented with a situation where we think we should ask, a friend or a loved one. What are some questions, or how can we kind of like broach the situation or the subject? Because like Ms. Jack said, it's a life or death situation, but it's also a very difficult topic to discuss. And so that's why we're having this critical conversation today, to kind of just get the elephant out the room and be able to know how to interact with somebody that we suspect may be thinking about it.
I'll jump in here. To kind of go back to what we were saying before, if this person is in any stage of the thought process about the idea of taking their life, being direct about it really, again, makes it very concrete and gives it the importance and the significance that it deserves. But you can, even if they're not actively ready or thinking about doing it right now, and it's just in the thought process as a passive thought, you can kind of get them to think beyond the moment, because that decision is a permanent solution to what may be, short-term, temporary conditions. So asking questions about, well, what's been going on? You seem different lately. Asking questions about what they see for themselves in the future, if they can see beyond the present time, and kind of getting them engaged in a conversation in that way. Even if best case scenario, you're able to just kind of find out what's going on and help to walk with them to get the help that they need to deal with whatever it is. You kind of help bring it to the surface.
Anyone else have any thoughts in terms of, I don't want to call it an icebreaker, but just broaching the situation? I know when I think about that first acronym, so the ASK, I think about, maybe engaging someone and asking them, you seem a little depressed, or you seem out of sorts. You don't seem like your typical self. What's going on? Is that a permissible type question? Does that sound?
Yes.
Like,
and a lot of the stuff we give, especially in my different trainings, it's just a framework to kind of guide your thinking. Like, far as have you been depressed lately? Have you been sleeping a lot lately? Have you not been eating? To just kind of guide it into like their introductory questions to figure out what's going on. And when we do ask the question is, be sure to give somebody your full attention. I have to say this now because it's so much of society. We're plugged into social media and through our phones. But this could be one of the deepest conversations that somebody has. So give them your full attention. I like to say, engage them with your face. Look them in the eye and just be there and just be present in the moment to listen. Because this isn't something that can be rushed. And if you can, when you're asking this question try to do it in a private setting. So that way they're not embarrassed or they don't feel like we don't want to, I'll put it this way, we don't want to devalue anybody's experience at all, because there is ways that we can ask the question the wrong way is like, you're not thinking about suicide, are you? Because then it gives the person a way out. So we have to be very direct and upfront about it.
Thank you. That gives me a little bit more context. Once they respond, like, what if you're not sure of what to make of their answer, or if the person is resisting help? What are like the next steps to kind of make sure that we're doing that second step, which is the care, and then the third step, which is escorting, or Justin, under your acronym, it's basically the same, substitution of words, but showing that empathy and that I care about the individual, but more importantly, if some type of intervention is required, that I'm going to get you to that next.
Well, I mean, yeah. Officer Lash, you could probably help guide this somewhat, but the two biggest factors that need to play in your decision-making of getting them help is, are they a threat to themselves? Or are they a threat to somebody else? If at the moment, if they're a threat to themselves or somebody else, that's when mobile crisis and then the police department need to get involved. And that's why it's so great about Memphis is that we have officers that are so trained well and have a program that is old as it is to be able to intervene and get somebody help. And the biggest thing is if the police do show up, I think there's a stigma around that. This isn't a arrest. This is to get somebody help. If somebody gets in the back of a police car and they have a mental health issue, if mobile crisis can't respond, they're getting them help. This isn't a criminal charge. And I think that's what we need to paint the picture around. If the police do show up and get somebody help, is they are not going to jail, especially as it deals with the issue of homelessness or addiction or anything else. Is that person needs to feel safe.
And Officer Lash, I think I see you unmuted, so if I know you have something probably to add to that as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, in the 40 hours and not just in our 40-hour training. I mean, our regular officers or non-CIT officers also get to witness our CIT officers in work, so they learn some of what's actually happening. So the first thing is, if we're already here, then we need to be genuine with that individual. And if you say you're willing to help, you need to be willing to help. You need to be willing to assist, walk that person in, hand them off gingerly, for a lack of a better term, but in a positive manner, so that individual feels that they're receiving the assistance that they were looking for, or they may not know they're looking for. And I wanted to expound a little bit on what Jason said. If they go into denial on me and I can articulate or I can see the behaviors that could be dangerous to themselves or someone else, I actually have a Tennessee law that I can use to assist that individual in getting help. And that's another good thing about the state of Tennessee, is that they have the law in place.
Ms. Jack, I see you opened your mic as well. Do you have something to add?
I wanted to go back to the original statement that you made when you said, if I'm not sure what to make of their answer, or it's not really clear. I know that can be a really confusing space to find yourself in. Is, okay, am I overreacting? Are they really telling me the truth? And I like to say it would be better for them to be a little upset with you and still be here than for you to be afraid to go to that next step when you are really concerned. Because maybe the behaviors, like Officer Lash was saying, that are presented don't line up with the denial that you're hearing verbally in that moment. Go ahead and do what you need to do to help that person to stay here so that they can be mad at you later. Because if they're not here, then, then that's something that you can't fix. You can't do anything. So do what you can while you can. And if those behaviors and those verbalizations don't match up, then you have to go with your gut and err on the side of caution.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I'd rather err on the side of, acting upon it than not acting upon it. And I think what you said, trusting your gut and listening, is very good as well.
And there are numbers. I mean, I think pretty much as a society, we're aware of a lot of the numbers, but there's the National Suicide Prevention Line, 1-800-273-TALK. If you're a veteran, you can press 1, and it'll connect you with the VA. There's also the crisis text line. You can text TN to 741-741. And actually, through this whole shared experience that we've had of being shut down through coronavirus, we've seen a huge increase of people using the crisis text line versus the national hotline. I think that's got a lot to do with confidentiality. So if you think somebody is upset and they're still in a private state, the text line is good, especially if they live in an atmosphere where they can't talk open publicly on the phone. They could text TN to 741-741. and they'll be connected to a mental health professional. And maybe that's just the beginning stages. We also have the number 855-CRISIS-1. That's this Tennessee statewide crisis line. But those are always good numbers to have handy with you. If you want any posters or any kind of printouts, you can go to tspn.org and you can download them on our website.
And Justin, that's good information. After this, what we'll do is we will send out all of those numbers to everyone here at the city, and just make sure that everybody is aware that there are numerous resources, calling or texting available. One thing I wanted to talk about is also the stigma of people not wanting to seek help or assistance. Maybe you're sitting out there and you're struggling, and I was at a conference one time and they said, raise your hand if you've been dealing with allergies, and people raised their hand, and raise your hand if you've ever had, back pain. And I mean, raise your hand if you've ever had a surgery, and people were just, free for all. And then they said, well, raise your hand if you've ever experienced depression. It was like 2 people. So you've divulged all of this medical information about yourself because it's commonplace for people to have surgeries or headaches or sinuses but the moment that we start talking about depression or our mental health, it's almost like people clam up. So another reason why I wanted to kind of have this conversation is to start normalizing. We go to the dentist, twice a year. We need to start normalizing going and checking on our mental health. And so here at the city, we look at wellness in 4 different kind of like pillars. We look at the physical health, obviously, but we also look at our emotional and our mental health as well. And we look at our social health, and we also look at our financial wellness as well. But for the emotional piece, that's the one where people just kind of tend to shy away from. So I thought it was important for us to start having these open conversations because quite frankly, we've lost some colleagues right here within our own organization. Justin, at the beginning of the call, talked about statewide, countywide. No, let's bring it even closer. We have lost some of our friends and colleagues here at the city of Memphis. And so for that reason, I feel like it's just so important for us to kind of just talk about it. And so one of the things that is available to City of Memphis employees is that we incentivize you to do certain things. And so we incentivize you to go know your numbers, like whether or not you have high blood pressure or, elevated glucose. We incentivize you financially to find out if, just go to the doctor once a year and get that annual well exam. This year, we started incentivizing our employees to go get that mental health checkup as well. You get that physical checkup, that mental health checkup is just as important. And so we do incentivize our employees to do that as a way to make sure that, from top to bottom, that you're okay. One other thing, and I kind of want to just talk about resources that are available to our employees, is that through Concern, which is our employee assistance program, we have unlimited visits. We can go see a counselor. Anyone in our home can go see a counselor. They don't even have to be related to us. As long as they're under your roof, they can go and see a counselor for free at Concern. And a lot of people question like, oh, well, they don't have to be related to me. If somebody is in your home and they're stressed out, you're probably stressed out, right? It's not just because, oh, this person is not related to me, that this individual is not impacting me. If you're in my household and we have drama, then, I have drama. So I think it's important to remind people full-time, part-time employees have Concern as a resource. And their number is 4,000 to set up an appointment. It is, still COVID time. You can go into the office on limited occurrences, I think, for your first counseling session, and then you can do something remote from your phone or from, inside of your home. I also want to mention that through Blue Cross Blue Shield, we have 10 free mental health visits. So in addition to that mental health checkup, you can go for ongoing treatment counseling sessions. And if you think about it, in most circumstances, when you have a conversation about whatever may be bothering you, 9 times out of 10, you feel better. But the thing that you get from going to see a specialist like Ms. Jack is you're going to feel better, but then she's going to give you tools and techniques to help you feel better. So you're going to receive something for what you gave as well. The other thing that I just kind of want to close with is, Ms. Jack, do you have anything that you want to say in reference to those comments about just coming and seeking assistance from a counselor? I'm going to start with you and then we'll go around the panel for some other insight on that topic.
Yes, ma'am. You've said it so beautifully already that it needs to be normalized in seeking wise counsel, just as you go to the doctor, the dentist, or any other specialist. What hurts, you go to a podiatrist. That's the only part of us that, we neglect the way that we do. So definitely going and seeking therapists. And it doesn't have to be the worst case scenario. You don't have to be at the point that you feel like you need to question whether or not you want to be here anymore. But you can go to a therapist at any point and just talk about the things that are stressing you, that are worrying you, whether it be work, whether it be home, or just societal issues that are putting pressure on you. Definitely go. Therapy can help anybody to come back from the darkest places that you can go to. And so no hesitation. The big thing I'd like to add to what you said about what you can get from a therapist and talking about it is, in addition to those things, that somebody can say, hey, I can talk to my best friend and feel better about this. When you go to talk to a mental health professional, just like your doctors, just like any medical professional, you have privacy. It is protected. It is your health information. It cannot be shared. It cannot be repeated to other people. And so privacy is very important. You are going to get private care that is non-judgmental and that you can talk about whatever you need to, and that stays between you and that therapist. So really, what do you have to lose? It's all up to you. There's no one else involved. 90% of people who get help, are able to really significantly reduce those things that are bothering them, those symptoms and that impairment that they are facing in their daily lives. It just improves your overall quality of life so that you can be the best you.
Thank you. On that privacy topic, I would like to say, people sometimes they worry like, oh, it will get back to the city if I go to a concern, or it will get back to the city if I, go seek out help from a counselor. But guess what? Miss Jack has 2 degrees. I'm sure she had to take some tests for her certifications, and she does not want to jeopardize those by calling and telling, something that you told her in confidence. And that's just like a physician. He or she is not going to jeopardize that investment, the money that they, paid for that education, as well as the time that they spent to acquire those certifications. They're not going to jeopardize that by telling your information. So I'm glad that you did recognize that piece as well, because sometimes that's a barrier for us. Officer Lash, I see that you've opened your mic. What would you like to add?
Yeah, if I could, I want to address the super tough humans out there, because we can only be tough for so long. I was told a long time ago that you never take or you never learn how to lay bricks from a tire changer. What does that mean? It means if there's things going on, you need to take it to the right person. You go to your physical doctor to get your checkups. You also need to do that for your gray matter, because sometimes things do get off kilter and it's not in your control. So super tough guys and gals, go get it checked out by the person that needs to be checking it.
Good point. And also, Miss Jack, she stated, you know, why do I need a therapist when I can talk to my friend? I think I would prefer to talk to somebody who has been trained to assist and support me on this particular topic. That's just like if you're having a heart attack, you don't go to the dentist, you go to the cardiologist. So for whatever it is that you're experiencing, you need to make sure that you're going to the right individual to assist you. Justin, anything that you'd like to add from your perspective?
Yeah, so this is just for me personally, as somebody that has had issues related to mental health from my time in the Marines and my combat deployments to Iraq, to even my time on the police department. I found myself in a bad place. I didn't know how to get out of that place, but to this day, I see a mental health professional, and it's helped uncondition some of those things that I've learned that kept me alive. But as being a normal citizen, didn't necessarily transfer over. So that's, as somebody who has contemplated suicide and has came out from the other side of it, I did not know how effective that it would be in my life to have evidence-based treatment as far as cognitive behavioral therapy. And it's literally a night and day difference. It has been for me to feel safe in my own skin and to realize that it's okay to be scared. It's okay to have feelings of doubt and depression, but it's not the end of the world. Like, there is hope at the end of this. You can come out to the other side. But sometimes it takes courage for us to say that I'm not okay and that I need to talk to somebody else that has the tools that I don't have to get to the other side.
Justin, that was really courageous of you to share your story with us. I think that's really inspirational that you were at a place that was dark and you were able to fight your way back. And now you're an advocate, you're a regional director for the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network, and you're using your energy and your efforts to kind of help others. So I commend you for that. I commend you all for the work that you do. Officer Lash, you know, I'm just so grateful for our officers. I'm really grateful for our CIT program because, as I stated, we were the first in the nation to recognize that when you are interacting with the individual who is having, an issue, if you will, that you need somebody with a specialized background and training to address that. Ms. Jack, I thank you for participating today as well. Ms. Jack, I know I have heard from officers and firefighters and other employees that have come to you and basically, said, she's helped me. So I thank you for what you're doing for our employees. And I just wish everybody well and just stay the course and just keep doing what you're doing because this is such important work. And to our employees, be looking for additional information coming that gives you those resources. And always just remember that if you encounter someone or you suspect it, to ask, to care, and to escort in the event that they need to seek additional resources above what you're able to offer them. So I thank you all for participating in today's critical conversation on World Suicide Day. Thank you.